And hello and welcome to Magical Journeys Paranormal Files. What is 7 foot tall, has green scaly skin, 3 fingers and 3 toes, and likes to chase cars? I'll give you the answer to that in just a moment. But before we get started with that, let me do a little bit of housekeeping and tell you about magicaljourney.com and my social media. Magicaljourney.com is my website for all things Magical Journey. You can find out how to reach me for readings or to be on the podcast. You are going to find the magical merch store there, where you can become my walking, talking billboard by buying magical merch. And you will be able to find the links to my Facebook group as well as Facebook pages dealing with the podcast and the Paranormal Files. So, with that said, the other new addition, and I know this is not for everybody, but I did launch a Patreon recently, and there are two types of Patreon accounts currently. There is a freebie, which gives you some content not found anywhere else, and gives you access to a couple of chats. On the paid tier, which is the cost of a cup of coffee, actually it's cheaper than a cup of coffee now, the last time I checked the prices, you will get that, everything from the freebie tier, plus you also get video content that you'll find nowhere else. You will get Q&A sessions and live chat, as well as live video with me from time to time to discuss some of the content on the site, as well as articles and other content related to the current topics that I'm discussing on the channel. So becoming a member is definitely going to get you some added bonuses to all of the details revolved around the cases that I'm working on currently. Now, where do the proceeds from these go? It goes right back into doing the content and working on the channel. All money that I earn from the shows goes right back into production and cost for doing the shows and cost of software, equipment, anything that is show related. All of the proceeds that I make from tips, content, sales, all of that goes right back into the show. So there's the housekeeping for today. So let's talk a little bit about today's show. So in June of 1988, in South Carolina, Lee County, South Carolina in particular, a very interesting experience happened one night with a young man, Christopher Davis, who was driving home from his job at a fast food restaurant. And he went through the swamp areas of this county and in the town where he lived at. And while he was doing that, his car had a flat. Not a big deal. Everybody has a flat. It was a dark night, so he really only had like the light from his headlights and from the moon to really work with getting the car back on the road. He got his car fixed, got the tire replaced, put the old tire in the trunk of the car, and that's when he noticed something in the distance. He described this creature as green and wet-like, 7 feet tall, with skin like a lizard and snake-like scales. It's very important to remember for later. When he noticed this creature coming around, he immediately jumped in his car and took off. It was down the road a little ways that he noticed that the creature was on top of his car. So Christopher, being Christopher, thought very quickly and was able to apply the brakes and get the creature off the car. The creature rolled off the car. He took off and he was able to get away from the creature. What he did notice, though, later was the scratch marks, the claw marks, and even teeth marks on the car later from the attack. Now, this posed a problem for the town that really turned into a moneymaker for them for a bit of time. The local newspaper picked up on it. Christopher was very reluctant to come forward. Apparently, he did tell somebody who persuaded him to finally come forward. And so the story wound up in the newspaper. It became a very big overnight sensation. Newspapers, Dan Rether came and did a story with the sheriff of the town. Good Morning America wound up doing a segment on this strange thing that happened there. And the term lizard man got attached to this creature. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is that the story blew up literally overnight from this one sighting, and that became a bit of a problem. So I did find a video clip of an interview that Christopher Davis gave to the news media about this sighting, and I want you to watch it here.
Said it was about 7 foot tall with red glowing eyes and very fast, and it appeared to have 3 long fingers on each hand. I thought it could have been a bear or something that he saw. We don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. But he saw something because nobody could have been frightened like he was.
My tires was bust on it flat. So I got out and changed about 2 a.m. that night. After I was finished changing, I was putting flat in the jack in the trunk. And I looked back, I saw red eyes, big red eyes thing running toward me. So I jumped in the driver's side, and when I was shutting the door, it grabbed the door. So I jerked the door and shut it and pulled off. And I looked in the mirror, I saw.
So a couple of things for the interview. First of all, the thing had 3 toes and three fingers. So the sheriff mentioned something about it could be a bear, but that doesn't really add up because bears have more than 3 appendages on their paws. So yeah, there's that. The other thing is the fact that the media focused completely on Christopher Davis' story, but they never really picked up the other 12, at least 12 sightings that were reported with the lizard man. Okay, so prior to Christopher Davis and his sighting, there was another sighting in the fall of 1987, and this was George Holman. George Holman Jr., he was 31 years old, was riding his bike down to the fresh spring waters there in Lee County about 2:30 a.m. So it was literally midnight, just after midnight, when he was riding his bike down through there. And why you would do that out in the country areas, the swamp areas at night, I have no idea because wild animals are all over the place. But he was. He took a drink from the spring, and then he turned around and turned toward what he saw was a creature of sorts that was across the road. And he tried to decide exactly what he was seeing. Was he seeing a bear? Was he seeing a man? What was it that he was really looking at? And then he realized this thing was 7 to 8 feet tall. It stood like a man, but as a car drove by there, he noticed that the eyes glowed red. And then the lizard man turned around and walked back into the swamp, probably because of the other car that passed by. Although he liked to chase cars, so who knows? Maybe he had a hot date. Who knows? The area around the swamps where he was seeing in a 3-mile radius, that became the lizard man's home base. That's where his stomping grounds really were. So known to attack cars. And one of the reports, Tom and Mary Wayne's car had been attacked. There were chew marks on it. There were scratch marks on it. The bumper had been chewed up. It was pretty bad condition. And it was very interesting because my first thought is, why would a cryptid go around just attacking people's cars? That's really weird. But then cryptids aren't really known not to be not weird, right? Right. So there's that. There were many people that were thinking that this thing, whatever it was a bear. And possibly in some cases it was a bear, but that was a false sighting if that was the case. The big piece of evidence that came around was, other than damaged cars, which the creature apparently liked to chew on cars a lot, because there were several of those that had been damaged by something. 2 officers went to this area where Davis had his sighting, and they discovered 14-inch footprints with 3 toes on them, and did a plaster cast of those. With that, that was the first and only real solid evidence that they had. The sheriffs, the officers, they didn't really push this out to the media at the time so much or anything. So it stayed very local. The sightings, though, after that began to slow down a little bit. But then radio station WSCOS decided to offer a $1 million reward for anybody that could bring the lizard man in alive. This led to a slew of false reporting, including one in August 5th of 1988, when Airman Kenneth Orr reported seeing the lizard man on Highway 15, and reportedly shot at it and wounded it. However, a couple of things happened that proved that this was not a real report. Okay, first of all, he was charged with unlawfully carrying a pistol, and secondly, he was charged with a false claim, filing a false report. So it's believed that pretty much that report was not necessarily true. Now, there was also a conflict in types of creatures that were being reported. So in a lot of cases, you had people reporting creatures with scaly skin and red glowing eyes. But then you had these reports of something furry and unusually shaped eyes being reported as well. So totally different creatures, it sounds like to me, but they were definitely they were reporting something. And those furry creatures could have been misidentified bears, actually. It's kind of hard to tell, especially considering they were brown furry creatures. Okay. And they didn't really like, there's no real definition of height given in that little blurb that I found on that. So there was an uptick in false reports, and there was just a lot of controversy surrounding all of the reports after a while, to whether the lizard man was real or not. Some people even went as far as saying that the Air Force was dressing up in costumes and scaring people, or trying to scare people, which is kind of ridiculous if you think about the possibility of getting shot because you had a lizard man outfit on. Not okay. There was another report in 2005. A lady reported seeing two lizard-like creatures, lizard men type creatures in her yard. But you don't hear a lot about the lizard man so much in reports right now, whether they're suppressed reports or whether it just is not a thing anymore. It's kind of hard to say. So what are my thoughts on the lizard man? Well, to be honest with you, I'm a little leery about this one. I mean, I believe the initial story from Davis. I believe that he saw something, and he saw something that scared him. And I believe his story about seeing a tall lizard-like creature. I have no doubt. I mean, his reaction to the whole thing, his hesitance to come forward. I think Christopher Davis legitimately saw something. Now, possibly some of the other reports, I think there was at least 2 or 3 reports that were legitimate at the time. But it's kind of hard to say. I mean, there's loose evidence given, loose stories given about finding evidence around cars that were damaged by some creature. And, it's one of those stories that has just enough weight where it has weight to make you wonder and say, something somewhere happened here. These people were generally afraid of something, the ones that saw what they saw. The fact that they saw something that was like lizard-like and tall rules out to me a possibility of bears, unless it's a bear with some serious mange and some other issues going on. It's really hard to say that you would misidentify a bear as a scaly creature. With this one, I'm really baffled, to be honest with you, whether the lizard man is real or not. I do have one video and one photograph that is purported to be the lizard man. That I will show here in just a second. But I don't know how I feel about. I just don't know how I feel about this one. There's, the fact that it's very localized, the fact that we just have the one pair of, or not even a pair, we have one footprint that had been duplicated a couple of times with plaster cast. Not a lot of legitimate and hardcore reports that really stick out as true. And so it's really hard to say with this one. I'm officially calling this case lukewarm cold, if that makes sense, because I just don't have enough of information about it. But let's look at the video and of the newer video of what is reported to be the lizard man. So, I mean, again, like a lot of videos, it's not very, you can't see a lot of detail. You can't really tell what you're looking at in a way. But they say it's the lizard man. They believe it's proof of the existence of lizard man. It's the only real video footage that I've seen taken of that claims to be the creature. So again, I think I'm probably going to put this in the cold case files, to be honest with you. And hopefully at a later time and date, there will be new information come out about the lizard man, maybe new sightings, because to date, I just don't feel comfortable with calling this a legitimate case, but I don't feel comfortable completely calling it a hoax either, because the one thing that's hinging on this is Christopher Davis's report and his reaction being so authentically scared and not wanting the attention that he was getting because of the case. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about that. And part of me wants to say maybe he just felt uncomfortable at the time because, still in the 1980s, for a young man of color to come forward and get attention like that with the media, the way he was getting, was not necessarily comfortable. Because, of course, at that time period, people were still kind of, going through their not so politically correct stage. And there was a lot of still kind of iffy opinions about people of color and so forth. So that may have been what made him so uncomfortable. But, unfortunately, Christopher Davis, like some of the other people who saw the lizard man up close and personal, within 10 years of the time that he saw the lizard man, he passed. So in this case, he was actually unalived at by a person and a group of people. Unfortunately, we really don't have a lot to go on as far as anything from him in current days because of that. But yeah, so I don't know. Let me know what you think about the lizard man in the comments below. and tell me what your opinions are on all of the story. Maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe there's not. Maybe it is a complete tale of fiction. Let me know. Meanwhile, please do not forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Those are the 4 things that will make me grow. And I really appreciate when this account grows, because it just helps me to continue to do what I do and bring you guys great content. So that is the paranormal file on the lizard man. I will have, this is the beginning of the cryptid series that I promised you guys. And I will have about 4 or 5 more episodes dealing with cryptids, at least 4 or 5 more, possibly more than that. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. We'll see what your attention span is with it, how you engage with it, and whether it's a very popular series. And meanwhile, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you being part of the show and the premiere. And as always, thank you, and may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something in our